Good evening and welcome to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wraith. It's Wednesday night, which means it is retro night, and it's good evening to George, to Steve Wilkinson, to Stu, to Mitch, and to Steve Hasty. Good evening, lads.
Evening,
Good
Steve.
evening.
Hello. Evening.
Good to see you. And this week, once again, we've been given a bit of a mission to try and find games and ex-players that played for both teams and celebrities, but we've managed to do it. It's Newcastle United against Derby County this week, and Tom Dixon, I think he sets his watch every week, and he's got straight in at 5 o'clock with, can we do Hull City next week? So Hull City it is next week, and we've had a request to do Southampton the week after. So Hull City, then Southampton is your tasks, lads, for the weeks ahead. So obviously we'll wish you luck with those, and we'll waste no time. We'll get straight on with the games, and it's over to you, George, for the first game, Newcastle against Derby.
Well, it's going to be something of a history lesson as well, I can tell you. My first game is 1948-49 season, April 49, at Derby, where, thank you, but that's the home.
That's the home one, but that's the right year.
It is. And we won that one as well. And the reason I say it's a bit of a history lesson, because although I didn't go to the game, I didn't go to the game simply because my father and my two uncles, Tom and John, and my grandfather realised that a coach full of Geordies going to Derby for a match was going to involve quite a bit of alcohol, which was not going to be extremely very pleasant for a 7-year-old at the time. Otherwise, I probably would have been there. Anyway, the history lesson isn't just about the match. It reminds you about why we legacy supporters are what we are. In those days, we had common sense. If a bus company wanted to take a bus load of lads to Derby, they could go up to the St James's and get the tickets themselves, and as long as they sold the tickets for the bus, it was done. The supporter didn't have to do anything other than get on the bus and pay for the ticket. And at the time, my grandmother, Nana, Neil's big Nana, great-grandmother, worked for the local coach company. She used to sweep the buses out. Hollands used to run at Sharabangs from Sunhome to Wallsend, but they had 4 luxury coaches which they used to use for trips. So the two uncles who used to generate all this fun, and my father, he said to me, Nana, ask Alfie Hollands if he'll run a bus to Derby. And of course, because Mrs. Bryan, that's what the Nana asked it, because Alfie Hollands did. He went and got the 35 tickets to fill his 35-seater bus. And the next thing, the bus was full. My dad, my grandfather, 2 uncles, and all the mates from the Pennywed Barn, Wallsend, were off to Derby. And of course, the thing with my dad was that in Derby, one of his sisters lived. And because his plan was, well, I'll get to see my sister. So on the way there, 1 or 2 of his friends said, what you do for your lunch, Harry? And he said, oh, I'm just going in now. And so, oh, well, you come, you see. And then bit by bit, as the bus got a bit closer to Derby, my dad realised that the 2 uncles, Tom and John, they were inviting their friends to go to Nan. So by the time they got to Nan Street, the whole bloody bus was having Anthony Nans. So as we're getting off the bus, my dad said to the driver, well, I don't know what you're going to do for an hour while we're having lunch. Oh, he says, it's all right. John says, I can come in here and get me lunch as well. So even the driver was going in for his lunch to this. Bear in mind, we're still in Rushden. Didn't faze me Auntie Nan at all. She worked at the local corner shop. She went scurrying along the shop, came back with hands full of bread and tins of spam and stuff that the man who owned the shop gave her, and her daughters and some of the neighbours made sandwiches. So this lot all piled in to get their sandwich lunch. And while she was at the shop, the lad who owned the shop said to her, have they got any beer? Well, they didn't have much beer left by then. And he had some, what do they call the big brewery down there? Buxton's. He says, I've got some Burton. I've got some Burtons in the shop, but I can only let you have so much. So the lads said, well, we'll take everything you've got and come along, come all the crates of beer. And then after they'd finished their dinner, he'd whisper at me, Auntie Nan, are they short of fags? Because fags were on ration as well. And Nan said, yes, I think most of them are. So they had a whole case of Woodbines on the bus before they went home. So, as I say, this is how legacy fans were born, gentlemen, you know. And anyway, they had their dinner and off they went to see a fantastic match. My Auntie Nan's husband was Cyril, who was a radar expert in the RAF, and he built his own television. And in 1953, all the women in the family went to Derby to watch the coronation on Cyril's homemade television. That's the sort of egghead he was, a clever lad, a bit of a bore minder at a party, but never mind, he was a clever lad. Anyway, this was a match that we were likely to lose. So the pundits were saying. The fact is, we beat them well and truly. 4-2 to Newcastle, and because Derby were well up the league, but so were we. Bear in mind, this is our promotion season, the season before we won the second division, with an average crowd of 53,600. The biggest average attendance in Europe. Does that sound familiar, boys?
Mm-hmm.
And this season is our promotion season, and we're knocking spots off the first division, which were top for a good way through that season. And it wasn't until near the end we did a usual Newcastle thing. We lost points to teams in the bottom six. Otherwise, we would have won the league hands down. We ended up as fourth, but this game ended 4-2. And the team was Fairbrother, Cowell, Batty, Dodge, and Harvey, who scored a goal, Brennan, Sibley, who scored, Taylor, Stobart, George Robledo, who scored 2, and Bobby Mitchell. And the manager was George Martin, of course, and the assistant manager was Norman Smith. Now, here's another bit of the history lesson. George Martin was quite a character. And in the middle of that season, the directors, or the doctor, what's his name, who was the director in Westwood and Hereford, that's right, Hereford, Westwood, Seymour, all went down to the Theatre Royal to see the manager of the Theatre Royal and said to him, they had an opera on, and they said to the manager, you need to sack your tenor. Our manager's a better tenor than he is. And you want to audition George Martin for the role of tenor in this opera. Trying to think which one it was. It was one of the big operas as well. Anyway, eventually the manager was persuaded to listen to George Martin sing. And sure enough, for a week, he sacked his tenor and the Newcastle manager sang in the opera. This could only be Newcastle United, couldn't it? I mean, really, you know. And George Martin knocked our socks off. Back to the football, of course. We got promoted with a huge, nearly £100,000 profit, and Seymour was spending money like water. But at that time, we had 40 professionals on the staff, and halfway through the season, 17 of them were on the transfer list because they couldn't get a bloody game. And Seymour was still buying. Cardiff had a lad called Chambers, an outside right, who everybody wanted to buy, but nobody could afford him. Seymour could afford him because he hired 17 grand at the transfer fee to Cardiff, and the bloke signed for us. Where was he going to play? We already had 40 players, and so there was another addition to the problem. So halfway through the season, the directors decided, because there was so much discontent in the club with 17 on the transfer list, that they would have a round table meeting and allow the players to express their concerns about things that were going wrong and things that were going right. I mean, could you imagine that happening now? God save us. And apparently it went quite well, according to the directors. None of the players commented, mind. And they sorted out one or two things. One or two players weren't happy about the houses they had, and that was sorted out, and all the rest of it. And it was got things right for a while. But still, by January, February, there was still 16 players put on the transfer list. in which Westwood came out and said, well, the manager didn't put them there, so the people who did put them there should come out and state their reasons publicly so that everybody could see it was above board. And of course, nobody did. But it was absolute mayhem, and we finished fourth. We should have won the league hands down, but typical Newcastle with a background like that, how could we win a league title? And eventually, by the end of the season, of course, most of the players that were on the list were getting transferred out. But it could only happen at Newcastle, couldn't it? I mean, it couldn't happen anywhere else. And the return leg that you showed the programme for, Steve, there was a picture I was going to put on of during the match with Stamps, the Derby centre forward, who was a very dangerous player, challenging the goalkeeper. When he's up in the air, his arms are like this, straight down. And the fact is, people used to train to jump without their arms up there. All of this sort of stuff is very modern as far as I'm concerned. The hours I spent in the gym at St James's Park doing standing jumps and sergeant jumps. Do you know what a sergeant jump is?
No, go on, demonstrate it if you can.
You crouch down as low as you can, and you leap up as high as you can. And what they used to have in the gym at St James's Park in the car park was a chalk wall. And you jumped up as high as you could and wipe your fingers on the chalk wall. And every week they used to see who could get the highest. And that was to strengthen your thighs to make you leaping. And the sergeant jump is a long jump without a run. So you get down on your hunkers and spring forward, all in aid of making you jump. But making you jump without having your elbows up here. When I listen to Shearer and I'm saying, well, you've got to have your elbows up there to jump and all. Nah, now you might have to, but you didn't used to have to in those days. Anyway, sorry for the history lesson and a bit of a rant, but that was 4-2 Derby against Derby at Derby, and a very eventful day for some people from Tyneside.
That's why people tune in, George. They enjoy listening to your stories. Never apologise for them. Great stories, great recollections. So, Steve Wilkinson, we're over to you, mate.
Have we got time for the teams now before?
It's funny, somebody says, how long's the show tonight? But and somebody also said that one of Steve Hastie's rants has lasted longer than the Super League, which is true. I love the fact you keep saying legacy supporter as well. Yeah, it's all very good tonight, lads. Go on then, Steve.
Well, it's very hard to follow a story like that from George, but I'm going to pick one of, I think, of the most exciting games against Derby over the years, and that was a game in 1976 when Newcastle won 4-3. And just a bit of background to the situation. Then Derby had won the league the year before. In the late 60s, Derby sort of became a decent team when Brian Clough and Peter Taylor were there. They won the league with them, and then it was the time, the season before this was the infamous time when Brian Clough thought he could go and sort Leeds out. We know what happened there. And Dave Mackay, well-known kicker from Tottenham, and in the earlier days, he took over his Derby at the manager, and they continued to be successful under Dave Mackay. And the year before this game, they'd actually won the league. And they had some decent players in the team, of the time. Colin Todd and Roy McFarland at the middle of the defence, Archie Gemmell, great Scottish player, Bruce Rioch, Leighton James, Franny Lee, who had previously been Man City, and Charlie George, well known from Arsenal days. So they had a decent team, and they were still in contention at the top of the league as this season was going on. We were in our first season under Gordon Lee. He'd already got rid of Terry Hibbett, so the writing was starting to be on the wall. But this game was a one that I remember significantly for the final goal. But I'll just go through the sort of incidents of the game. We as I said, Derby were riding high, so it was a good game because we're mid-table. They were a little bit higher than we are now, but no great shakes. We scored first. Tommy Craig hit a free kick. We're attacking the Gallagher end of the first half. And Tommy Craig took a free kick, chipped it into the box, and as the goalie was coming out, it clipped Colin Todd's head and went in the net. So it was an own goal to start with, and that was all the goals in the first half. But a pretty exciting game. And then the second half started, and Alan Gowland broke away on the right side, put across in the middle, and Jeff Nulty, who was one of Gordon Lee's boys in to take over from the likes of from Terry Hibbett. He headed the ball in the net. So that was 2-0 up. Yes. So another 5 minutes or so, and Derby started getting in the game and pulled one back through a Steve Powell header. And then Mac broke away on the left side, crossed the ball in the middle, and Tommy Craig, who was the sort of filling in the role for Terry Hibbett, a decent left foot, the same as him, but not as good as Terry Hibbett. But he broke in the penalty. It was brought down for a penalty. He actually took it himself. So Mac had been relegated from penalty duty for whatever reason. So Tommy Craig put it up 3-1, and yet you thought, here we are, we're gonna beat these lot. But Derby continued to press, and another 3 minutes, and they equalised from a corner. Charlie George scoring this time, and then 7 minutes from the end, they got a bit of a fluky goal. Archie Gemmell put a ball in from the left. It clipped Bruce Rioch's knee, and bounced over the head of Mick Mahoney. So it was 3s each. I thought, well, that's not a bad result, but the drama was still to come. And about 2 minutes later, the ball had got a corner, and on the east stand side of the Leazes end, Tommy Craig swung it in, headed out from the goal, went back to him, clipped it back in. Mac steeled in, avoided the offside trap, and headed the winner. Now, I was sitting in the front row of the East Stand at that time, which had been built a couple of years earlier. My dad had got a batch of season tickets in there with his mates from the post office, and I was one of them. And normally sat in the second row, but I think my mum was in the second row. I think my sister might have gone that game, so I sat in my dad's seat. I don't think he was there, or one of his mates wasn't. So I was in the front row. And I almost went over the edge of the seat, leaping up and down when this, because it was an exciting game anyway. When Sutamac scored, I can just remember holding myself back from leaping over the barrier to get the fall into the crowd below us on the East Stand. So that was 4-3, 85 minutes. But the game wasn't over at that time. We nearly scored again. Sutamac broke away on the left, clipped the ball across the middle, and Alan Gowland was steaming at the back post, and it was similar to the one Joe Linton scored the other week, and then probably what we expected Joe Linton to do, but he slotted away against Tottenham. But Alan Gowland failed to do that, hit it straight at the keeper. And then minutes later, Derby nearly equalised, another one, which was a fantastic save, initially from a shot from Charlie George, but Mick Mahoney parried it, and it went to Leighton James, and he blasted this shot. And Glenn Keeley did a flying header and headed it off the line. So it could have been 5-4 after those late, but we won 4-3. Fantastic victory. Derby went on to finish 4th that season. We finished again 15th, I think, and so it was. But it was the start of Gordon Lee's era, which obviously didn't last very much longer. Nor did Sutamac, which that was a pretty exciting game from the mid 70s. As my first offering tonight.
Brilliant stuff as always, Steve. Stu, over to you, mate.
Right, just before we start, I see that comment from Spenny there, right? And I tell you, because we've got this WhatsApp group, and Spenny's not working. I can't wait for him to get back in work, like when this COVID finished. I'm working in an office, right, full of Muslims who are all fasting for Ramadan, and there's every like him and Chris, our guys, there's every like 30 seconds beep beep on my phone, and it's like I'm gonna get them a room where they can actually meet together. It's gonna be like just get them a hotel room. It's gonna be easier for them. It's just the two of them just constantly talking, so I've had to mute it whilst I'm at work because I'm getting strange looks. You can imagine fasting all day and it's like this anyway.
Don't worry, mate. I think they've got the message. Okay, on your game.
Right, well, I changed game after you put your flyer on. I did have 2 picks. I've changed one of them. Now, people know I like to give shout-outs for people's birthdays, etc. Now, I'm going to try for a retro record today and mention 4 people, but not all at once. So the first one is a good friend of mine from back home, and he's a friend of the show. He's the guy who donated the flight round Newcastle, Steve.
Oh yes, yep.
For the
birthday. Yeah,
for Nick, it's his birthday today, so I promised him I'd mention that. Right, so on to the game. The first game that I took was a 0-0. When you think, well, why would you choose a 0-0? Arthur Cox was returning with Derby to play against, or pit his wits against Willie McFall's Newcastle. And it was a Mirandina-less Newcastle, because I believe he was injured at that game. Now, this game was on the 14th of November, 1987. It was the Heat's 14th birthday 14th birthday. And I remember it was a crisp, sunny afternoon. There was no wind and not a cloud in the sky, and it kicked off 3 o'clock. You knew it was going to get dark soon. But after 10 seconds of the kickoff, Peter Jackson went through. Well, I say he lunged at a player. It was launched. He must have watched The Karate Kid the night before, because it was like a running 2-footed. He just levitated like the Matrix, but it was before the Matrix. And he just took this player out after about 10 seconds. And if that was now, it's minimum 6-game ban. And I just remember the Heat's dad said, I had nothing wrong with that. And he just got like a stern ticking off of the referee after about 10 seconds. But what it did, it's quite literally stamped Newcastle's authority on the game, saying that they were up for the fight. And this was a Gaza-inspired Newcastle at the time. This is, I think, was his last season as well, the 87-88. And he ran the show. And he could have had a hat-trick himself. Paul Goddard could have had a hat-trick. Darren Jackson could have had at least 2-1, was the easiest chance of the lot near the end. But the reason I finished 0-0 was because, I know I put it on Twitter, it was one of the most inspired goalkeeping performances. Well, at that time, it was the most inspired goalkeeping performance I've seen in my life. I would still say it's in the top 5, maybe even the top 3 by Peter Shilton. It was England keeper. He just made world-class save after world-class save. And it's just when you mentioned it on the Flyers team, I thought, I remember that game. There was so many different things. It was £1.50 to get in. That's if you paid to get in, but it was his birthday and his dad was there, so we had to. And it was just the fact that it finished 0-0. It was a game that I remember quite vividly. With Paul Goddard running like everywhere, creating chances. Gascoigne just waltzing through as we all seen many times before he left. But it was really, really such a good game, and how it finished 0-0 was down to Peter Shilton.
Yeah, great game. I was at that. I mean, I remember coming away, from that game with my dad saying that, my dad saying that's one of the best goalkeeping displays I've ever seen. And I've spoken to Peter about it. I'm quite good friends with Peter, and I've had him up here for talkings, and he says it's one of his best games, and looks back on it with a lot of fond memories. But a great one to pick, and takes me back as well. Mitch, over to you, mate. Your first game.
Okay, well, this game is gone down in history with our fans, and certainly with mine and Stu's generation of fans. It's a game you were either at or you wish you'd been at. It's a game that had so much about it. Bad-tempered isn't the word. Bad-tempered before the game. 20th of April 1992, we'd lost 5 in a row. We were staying in the 3rd division in the face. We got down to Derby, and it was one of those games where you had to be on your toes, shall we say. It was one of those days, which is the reason why me and Stu get uncomfortable for sitting with my back to the door of the pub. It was one of those days. Made worse, actually, by the fact there was a bomb scare before the game as well. And rumours doing the rounds that the game was going to get called off, because I think there'd been about 2 weeks before, I think there'd been an IRA bomb in London. So it was, again, tensions were high generally in the country. And there we were staring the 3rd division in the face, taking a full allocation to the baseball ground and bringing it on. And it's a game, I think, that goes down in history for as much about the fans as about the game itself. And I've spoke to a lad I've known for years called Craig, another Wallsend lad who was down there with his mates. And I've just got to cross-check some of the stuff that he remembers, and I'll bring some of his stories in as well. The first half was a proper bad-tempered affair. We were down to 10 men pretty early on. Brock handled on the line, and the resulting penalty. And at the time, there was none of this double jeopardy thing. It was a red card and a penalty. By 20 minutes, we were 2-0 down, and about 15 minutes later, Kevin Scott got sent off for a bad-tempered foul on Marco Gabbiadini, of all people. And it was his second yellow. That caused Terry McDermott to go mental on the bench, and he got his marching orders from the bench as well. So you can imagine by then, we were quite on high door and very, very defiant. The noise coming from the away end was already ridiculous. We made it a half time, 2 men down. Second half kicked off, and within 4 minutes, Gavin Peacock had pulled one back. And I genuinely believe the only goal I've celebrated personally as much was probably Tino's third against Barcelona. The whole away end just went mental, and I mean mental, more mental than I can remember being in any time anyway. Bearing in mind we're 2 men down, we pull it back to 2-1, and we actually had a game on. We gave them a game for another 15 minutes. We more than matched them. We gave them as good as we got. However, of course, you run out of steam. On the 70 minutes, we went 3-1 down. And then Liam O'Brien got sent off. And if you see what he got sent off for, it was a straight leg toe punt, which was like something off of the Ministry of Silly Walks. It's one of the most ridiculous red cards I think I've ever seen anybody take. And it was pure frustration and tiredness. You could just see he couldn't even kick properly. He was that knackered. But he still had a go at booting the lad. If he'd caught the lad, he would have landed at Nottingham like. So I'm sure the referee that day had Derby for a home win on his coupon, because he was determined to make sure that it stayed that way. So there we are, with 3 men off. We conceded a fourth on 77. And all the time we were defiant. And we sung. And we sung. And we were defiant. And at the end, Peacock and Kelly nearly had to be helped off the pitch. They could hardly walk. The effort we gave as fans just kept them driving on. And they gave it. And they gave it. And I genuinely believe what happened after that, the game against Portsmouth and then the final day at Leicester, wouldn't have happened if it hadn't have been for that day. That day galvanised everybody on the pitch and off the pitch. It was one of those moments when the crowd and the team become one, and we are Newcastle United and we will never be defeated. And the day, the memory of the day, still gives us goosebumps talking about it. That entire day was just epic in a way that you could really hardly believe. And again, talking to Craig, who got a seat in the face, by the way, his mate ripped the seat up and tried to chuck it onto the pitch, and it boomeranged back round and caught him straight in the mush. They were saying they had the radio on and their bus on the way back up, and all BBC Radio Derby's post-match phone-in was about us. It was about the way end. Those fans that kept singing. Who are they? Who does that when you're getting beat 4-1 and you've only got 8 men on the pitch? And he said for an hour, all they would talk about was us. And it's where the phrase "best in the business" was termed about us as away fans. And I genuinely believe that kicked everything off. You've got to remember, if you count the following season, which I'll come to later, from that moment, we went on something like a 13-game unbeaten run. Altogether, across the 2 seasons. That crazy. Absolutely crazy. All out of a bad-tempered, horrible game, on and off the pitch. Rattled with bomb scares and rattled with sendings off. And yet, that away end showed the pride in Newcastle in so many ways that you wouldn't believe.
Brilliant stuff. Great recollection, Mitch. Steve, on to you for your first story. Steve Hasty.
Evening, guys. 6th of March 1976, 6th round of the FA Cup. Newcastle's 7th game in the FA Cup that season. After 3rd round 0-0 draw and a 2-1 win in the replay against QPR.
a 1-1 draw, and then a 5-0 win against Coventry in the 4th round, and then Bolton Wanderers 0-0 followed by a 2-1 win in the replay. So we'd had 3 replays. So there's our 6th game. We're on to the 7th. This game came the week after the League Cup final defeat against Manchester City at the baseball ground. Nobody's mentioned it yet, by the way, but the baseball ground, notorious for actually being a ploughed field rather than a football pitch.
Yeah.
There was not a blade of grass on the baseball ground for about 5 seasons, if my memory serves me right. So let's get to the game. As I say, it was the 6th round of the FA Cup. In typical Newcastle, after being defeated in a cup final, we ended up going in what we thought was going to be another cup final, heading towards another cup final, doing quite well. You know, we always consider ourselves a cup team rather than a league team. And we get 5 injuries. We have goalkeeper Mick Mahoney out. We have Tommy Craig out. We have Irvin Natris out injured. We have Jeff Nolte, who was injured anyway for the final. He's still not available. And then we had Paul Kinnell, if I remember rightly. He was also out. So we went into that team with a goalkeeper playing his very first game for Newcastle, which also turned out to be his last game for Newcastle. Young lad called Eddie Edgar, who I think, if my memory serves me right, he went to Hartlepool. But you know what? He had a great game. He had a really, really good game. Unfortunately, we got beat 4-2. Typical Newcastle. It was one of those games that when you get home, match of the day, you've got David Coleman. You know you've got the big game. You know it's the big cup game when David Coleman's the commentator on Match of the Day in the evening. And David Coleman has had that ability to make even the most boring of games exciting. But this game was exciting. As I say, we got beat 4-2. Bruce Rioch scored the first 2, one a nice tap in, the second one a beautiful free kick from the edge of the box, right in the top corner. Edgar couldn't get anywhere near it, and I don't think any goalkeeper on the day would have got near it either. 2-0 down. We pulled it back to 2-1 with Alan Gowland. It then went to 3-1, and then it went to 4-1. And then Gowland pulled another goal back and made it 4-2. What this game was also famous for was it was actually Supermac's last cup match for us. Because obviously at the end of that season, Supermac was then sold to Arsenal. And Steve, you've mentioned some of the players that were playing for the opposition already that season, and there were some great players. But there was another player whose name you didn't mention, who, for those of us of a slightly older disposition, will remember Roger Davies. He was a bit of a super sub. He was one of those players. He looked gangly. He was gangly, but he scored.
I remember.
And it was one of those that, you know, in a midweek game, then when you'd get the football on a Wednesday night, yet again it would be a Roger Davis goal off the back of his head or something like that, you know. But they did have some good players. The game was also for those who watch Spanish football. That game was selected in that team was a certain Ray Rocky Hudson. He only played 5 games for Newcastle in his entire career, and he went off to, at the time, which was the big place to go. He went to Fort Lauderdale, and then I think he ended up playing with Pele and Rodney Marsh, and then had an amazing career in America. And now he's the main commentator that people love to hear talking about Spanish football, with all the cliches that he comes out with and such like. But there we had Rocky Hudson playing one of his few games. We had Eddie Edgar in goal and Supermac's last 38,000, and that was another cup run that we thought was going to get us to Wembley in '76, but unfortunately it didn't materialise. And I think, if we're truthful, the reason it didn't materialise was simply the injuries. Those injuries coming just after the defeat in the cup final cost us that season. And I think most Newcastle fans honestly thought, after being in there in '74, having been in the cup final, in the League Cup final, I think we thought we're heading back in the FA Cup final in '76, but it wasn't to be. But that's my first recollection game anyway, Steve.
I think didn't have quite a few of them have flu and stuff as well. Is that?
Yes, I think there was a flu bug that hit them.
Yeah.
And I think Mick Mahoney went down on the morning of the game with it, and Edgar wasn't expected to play, and he got thrown in. And as I say, only one game. He went to Hartlepool, but unfortunate. But I think we brought in a goalkeeper and I think if my memory serves me right, we brought a goalkeeper in because that was typical Gordon Lee. You know, he was going to get rid of Mick Mahoney anyway, so he went out and he lashed out on a goalkeeper. I think I wrote it down who it was, but I cannot remember now. I haven't got my specs for this, so God knows who it was. But I'm sure we bought somebody crazy.
A big thanks to our sponsor, Spider VPN. They've sponsored us for the last 3 months for your internet security. Also, a big shout out again to Arcot Interiors, who are sponsoring us this month. Give them a visit at arcotinteriors.com. Give them a ring 01912 658 663 or email them enquiries@arcot.org.uk. Great to have them on board this month. And also a big shout out to qtechshop.co.uk, the makers of pool tables and snooker tables in Wallsend, Newcastle, and to John at Jab Signature, who makes all of our flyers. If you're a first-time visitor to the channel, then please subscribe. Just hit the Newcastle Legends logo in the bottom right-hand corner, and it's as simple as that. It is free to subscribe. Hit the thumb up to like the video, and click share to share the video and to share the content. And join the chat. Plenty of people sharing memories as the show goes along. We don't talk about what's going on in the modern day on this show, so a lot of people just commenting, and we're not ignoring it. It's just tonight's a chance to look back on yesteryear, and we pick a team each week. And if you're on Twitter, it's worth following Away Days 23. They have a wonderful photograph from the game that Mitch was just talking about. Actually,
yes,
1992, and it's actually. It's today, Mitch. It's the anniversary. Yesterday, sorry. April the 20th, sorry. So it was yesterday, wasn't it?
Yesterday.
That was that picture was put out by them. But somebody going on there saying legacy fans.
Legacy fans. No, but me mate Nick in Abu Dhabi recognises quite a few lads off of that picture when he saw it on Twitter. He went through it and named one of the lads on the barrier and some of the lads next to him as well.
Yeah.
We were down the side as well, weren't we, Mitch? We were down the side of the pitch as well as behind the goal.
Yeah, well, it was like an L shape because we had their full away allocation. You got to remember the baseball ground was a bit like bloody Goodison Park, you know, with stanchions, and it was a shed really, you know, and that typified how we were, and I'm quite sure we had more than the allocation in as well. It was heaving.
Yeah, kid called Noxie standing on one of the barriers anyway. But give them a follow. Away Days 23. There's always some really good photos of yesteryear on there, if that's the kind of thing you are interested in. And good of them to share that this week when we're looking at Derby. So George, on to you for your second game.
All right, not a long one this time, but before I do, Stu giving a shout for her birthday. I wanted to give a shout for Mary Glindon, our MP, whose husband died regrettably in the last day or so. Two great workers for the community. Yes, she's a Labour MP, but she's a hard worker for everybody in North Tyneside. And Ray was certainly a right-hand man. Great Newcastle supporters. So, rest in sympathy, Ray, and our sympathies go to Mary, and look forward to seeing her at St James's Park again. The second game is, I remember I was there, but I remember more about the tension in the crowd than I do about the game. It was the Saturday, the 4th of February, and of course it was just after Rafa's silence almost of what Ashley didn't do in the January transfer window. And I went along with other people thinking, well, is he actually going to be in the dugout? Is he going to turn up, or is he going to walk away? But there he was, and controlling things like he did in his own fashion. And it was a very tense match, as my memory. Matt Ritchie scored the only goal of the game. And to say 52,300 at the game, and just to show how things have or haven't changed, Darlow, Clark, Hanley, Ritchie, Yedlin, Shelby, Hayden, Diarmi, Gouffran and Mitrovic. Well, that's not a lot different to what we're playing at the moment. And but as I say, very tense in the crowd, very tense in the team as well. And the other thing that added a bit of spice to it, of course, is is the manager was McLaren. And the assistant manager was a little man called Kevin Phillips, who wasn't always popular at St James's Park. So there was a lot of things about the ground. It just wasn't the game, but the tension and the tension before the game, and people talking about Rafa and what was going to happen. Did anything happen? Would anything happen? And then, of course, it filtered into the game, really. And so the second match was something of a, compared to the first, something of an anticlimax, but an important one for us because we needed to get back on track if we were going to get this promotion. And I think the way they stuck in and got that point did set us on track to to finish the season the way we wanted, near the top of the league, or at the top of the league. So that was my second one, 1-0 at home, but a very tense game, and Matt Ritchie scoring the goal.
Nick from the Felon, good evening. He says, Old Corner and Scoreboard lads on many occasions were Leg of P fans. Very good, very clever.
Steve, somebody asked a question about what I said about going down on your hunkers, is what I said. Not,
yes, not hunkers.
Yeah, hunkers, not hunkers.
Hunkers, yeah. Okay, Steve Wilkinson.
Yeah, my second game is one it was mentioned earlier on by Keith Roll. I think the game in '99 with away at Derby, which Newcastle won 4-3. Just a sort of background story to this. That was the season, the beginning of that season, when we first formed NUFC, Newcastle Disabled Supporters Association, with Ros and Steve Miller, who many of you'll know on there. And we're trying to arrange away trips. Now, it was always difficult and still is getting enough wheelchair tickets. Most of the grounds, well, they've got a lot better facilities nowadays for people with wheelchairs and stuff. It's often difficult to get tickets for away fans, and they're usually quite a small number. And but Derby was at that time had moved to Pride Park. You were talking about the baseball ground earlier on, but Pride Park was one of the, I always call them Lego stadiums. There's loads of bog standard stadiums, Southampton and Sunderland and a few others that have got roughly the same design, and Pride Park was one of them. But one thing, because it was a new build, it had plenty of facilities for wheelchairs. So it was a game we could get tickets for. It was the second trip we'd had. We'd gone to Blackburn at Christmas time. And managed to get enough tickets on this Derby, because they also had quite a good Disabled Supporters Association, and we were setting ours up and wanting to model on that. So when we travelled down to the game, we're greeted by a guy who was their disabled liaison officer, a guy called Ted Gascoigne, lovely old bloke, and he just shook everybody's hand coming up the bus. You really felt welcome. Got us into the ground and said, if anybody wants anything, just let us know, and the stewards are well trained up. So the first incident that happened was pre-kick-off, because we were all behind the goal, which is where Newcastle fans always go in that Pride Park, and you're right down at the front. And the players were training in the warm-up, and they had the goal, and then alongside the goal they had a big net to stop the ball going into the pitch. You might, a lot of grounds have that sort of thing. And the team were warming up, and I was sitting in my chair quite near to where Ros Miller was, and suddenly the ball come flying through between the net of the goal and the safety net, hit by Andres Anderson, and hit Ros full in the face, and she was flattened by this shot that hit her full in the face. And Andres Anderson, the gap that he got this thing was almost, if he tried to do it, he wouldn't have been able to do it. So that was a great start. But so on the game itself, it was noticeable for some really fantastic goals from both teams. Derby took the lead with an overhead kick from Dion Burton after 8 minutes, and then Gary Speed equalised with a diving header soon after. So by just after 10 minutes, the score was 1 each. Derby got a penalty after 22 minutes and went one ahead, and then we got a free kick just outside the penalty area to the right side. Gary Speed took that and rifled a shot right across the goal at the far side. So it was 2 each after little more than 20 odd minutes. And then just before half time, we got another free kick. Now, what noticeable in this game was Alan Shearer wasn't playing. I can't remember whether he was injured or anything like that, but whether it was the week before we're playing the semi-final. So whether he was just rested by Ruud Gullit, I can't remember. I don't know if any of you can remember why Shearer wasn't playing. Silvio Maric was up front, and he tapped the free kick to Ketsbaia just inside of him from about 25 yards. Ketsbaia fired a shot, and it took a wicket deflection, beat the keeper. So half time we are winning 3-2. And then probably the goal of the game, the second half, Ketsbaia put the ball across, attacking the other end now, obviously, in front of the Newcastle fans, into the penalty area. Nobby Solano hit a fantastic volley, and he sort of came straight out of the crowd behind the goal and got mobbed, just as you imagine it. He went right in the crowd and shaking everybody's hand. That put us 4-2 up. And then near the end, I think it was the last couple of minutes, Paolo Wanchop, big lanky lad, came on for sub. And he headed in Derby's equaliser with another diving header. So there was some fantastic goals, and that was 3-4. And then back on the bus, and we were the lead bus out of. And there's a photograph Roz has got of us getting the first bus out on the convoy, getting away out at Derby County's ground. So we had a great day. There's a little old guy who used to come round from Derby, which was one of the helpers, and he came round just before half time and asked if everybody wanted a cup of tea, and he came round with a cup of tea for everybody that wanted one. So it was a great day, and it was a good introduction to how a disabled supporters group should be run, and we learned a lot, and obviously that's gone from strength to strength now, and 20 odd years on, Nuds are still going strong. Stephen and Ross still running it with doing great stuff, and obviously being involved with some of you guys on like so NUST and fans forum meetings, I think in recent years, just to get the mention of what disabled fans are like, and they've got disabled liaison officers here and things. So things are picking up now on that sort of side. So that's my second story.
Brilliant stuff, Steve. Great stuff. Yeah, and they do a great job for Nudzer. It's been fantastic over the years, and I've been lucky enough to pop along to some of the events that they've done at the club as well. Over to you then, Stu, for your second game.
Well, fast forward 10 years from my last one, so from 87 to 97, we were playing away, and it was on Boxing Day, which is George's birthday. So it's the third birthday. It's also Frankie, who I've mentioned a few stories as well. It's his birthday as well. But me and Darren went to the game, and Frankie wasn't allowed to come with us because the people that we went with would have just had his life all day. Just to put a bit of background to this, it was my daughter's first Christmas. So I had a nice family Christmas and ate too much, drank too much. And then we had to meet at 8 in the morning with, bear in mind, the daughter's just been born. So we're meant to be a bit more sensible now and mature and grown up. So when I was asked who you're going to match with, I just some friends from football who we play football with. So we meet in the salubrious surroundings of the Sporting Arms on Scotswood for an 8 o'clock in the morning login, curtains drawn, and basically we're told you've got to buy 5 pints, you've got an hour to drink them, and this is what you had to do. You know, there's no arguing with it. And the one thing I remember when Darren went to the toilet, he come back, he went, "Have you been to the toilet yet?" And I went, "No." He went, "You need to have a look, man." I says, "What for?" He went, "Just go and have a look and tell us what you think." So anyway, I went and I come back and I say, "There's blood all over the walls, dry blood all over the walls." He went, "Aye, but there's fresh stuff as well for them Radgies that were arguing before." So anyway, we managed to get out of Scots, we were across the bridge. And by no sooner we got across the bridge, the special cigarettes come out on the minibus. Now we had 3 minibuses going, and obviously you declined. But whether you wanted it or whether you didn't want it, by the time you got to Washington Services, the whole bus was stoned. You know, even the driver, and it was just morning. Now this is like 9 o'clock on Boxing Day morning, and you know you couldn't open the window because it was like just flumes. It was like the Pope had been announced, the new Pope had been announced if you open the window. You know, we had no choice but then we're obviously drinking still. So they go, well, that's bad enough. We'll get the local bar with our polite friends. See, I won't mention any of the names, but by now some of them are probably out of jail and watching this, so I've got to be careful. So the game was what the game we went 1-0 down after early doors, first few minutes anyway. From what at the time, now this is where we're talking about VAR. Or how referees have changed. If I mentioned Peter Jackson from 10 years previously, it looked a penalty. We were at the other end, and it looked a penalty from where we were sitting. But later on well, the next time I managed to get to see it, I think it might have been on Northern Life or something on the Monday or the day after anyway. It showed that the player, Sturridge, didn't even get contact. He just dived over. So VAR would have worked in our favour that day and it wouldn't have been a penalty. So that would have been 2 0-0s I was talking about. But David Batty got sent off in that game. Now, for the life of me, I know every single fan that it was never a red card if it's your team. It wasn't. He won the ball. He actually won the ball. It was his second yellow. And I think even in today's analysed games, it wouldn't have been a foul. But Batty had a reputation that as soon as he went to someone, he's going to, they're going to card him. So that's it. We got beat 1-0. I wrote 3 things down I remembered from the game. And it's something that Steve Wilkinson just mentioned before there. Was Pride Park. It was symptomatic of a lot of new stadiums that are cropping up at the time, like Meccano sets. And I think that was our first game there. So someone asked earlier, when did it start? My guess would have been 96, 97, around about that time. The second one was Paulo Wanchop. For anyone who was at the game, he was getting a bit of abuse in the warm-up. And then when they had a corner in the second half, and he went to retrieve the ball from behind the billboards. Someone, just a bit of banter, I suppose. And he started gesticulating towards the crowd. Well, this just incensed everyone. Imagine after Christmas Day and like a full Boxing Day drive down on the drink. And he ended up getting taken off. So we all, well, not all of us, but some people said, right, I'm going to write, because at the time you didn't just send Twitter accounts and things like that. You had to write to the FA and complain. But we never got round to it because of what comes next. The third thing is the 3 last named players on our team sheet that day were Des Hamilton, Ian Rush, and John Dahl Thomason. 1 year previously, when I was there, names on the team sheet were Alan Shearer, Les Ferdinand, and Peter Beardsley. So you know when you're not going to win nothing that year. So that was that. So we think when the game's finished, we'll get back in the minibuses. A few of the lads start winning, but then someone decided. Now I do have a geography A level, so I know how to get myself around the country. I've been to a lot of away games, a lot of away games at that stage. Someone took it upon themselves. They wanted to go and see their friend on the way home. The friend lives in Preston.
Oh, aye.
Now that is nowhere near the way home from Derby to Newcastle. But again, you can't really disagree with the people who are saying this is where we're going. So we end up having to try and squeeze into some hotel room with a Holiday Inn where there's 8 of us in one room, and a couple of Lilos got bought and you had to share. And it was just this madness, 30, 40 Newcastle fans walking around Preston on Boxing Day night. And the lad he was going to meet ran the doors at one of the clubs. I think it was, I can't remember the name of it, Tokyo Joe's or something.
Tokyo something guy.
I think Tokyo Joe's is in Wigan. Anyway, it was just one. It was on 3 levels. It's on 3 levels, and there was people queuing. We just marched straight at the front, and then, nice to see you, Mr. X. Right, lads. He says, "Can me, my mates get in?" So he thought there was about 3 of us. Well, there wasn't. There was nearly 40 of us, and you just all the queue complaining about these foreigners, northerners. We're northern to Preston, getting let in for now. So eventually we're filtered across 3 different, but we weren't allowed to stand in a group, so we had to go on the 3 different levels. No, needless to say, one of the levels got trashed. Everyone joined in, and there was a few sore heads and cut bodies, I suppose, in this hotel room. And there was no way I was sleeping. I was never so glad to get back home from the away match as I was that one. I was just on my toes all day and all night as it was. So that was the first game I thought of, but the second game I'd mentioned, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Always a good story with your away trips, Stu. I remember when you first came on, you said you had some corkers. You weren't lying. Mitch, over to you for your second.
Well, my second game is actually the season after the first one I talked about, August '92 at Derby. It was part of the unbeaten run at the start of the following season. What a different atmosphere, and it was all because they kept talking about us at the previous game. You'd go in for a pint and all the Derby fans would want to talk about how great we were as fans during the last game. Totally different atmosphere. The game itself, though, the first half picked up where the other game left off. It was a bit of a kicking match, actually. Truth be told, it was a little bit of a kicking match. But then it calmed down in the second half. Football happened. Round about the 50th minute, I think it was, Franz Carr, who had a superb game actually, drifted a beautiful cross in for Gavin Peacock, who opened the scoring. Then 5 minutes later, lovely interchange on the right wing between Lee Clark and Franz Carr. Lee Clark cuts back inside onto his left foot, drives a beautiful shot into the bottom corner. 2-0, and it really was game over. We dominated the rest of that game. They got a consolation late on, but the result was never in doubt. And what a world of difference the season on from the season before. Looking so comfortable, looking so confident, playing better football, but still galvanised, going back to the previous game, the previous season. And I still think that laid that foundation. And I think that when I look back, I found the footage online and looked back at it. I forgot how good Lee Clark's goal was. It's an absolute pearler. You must have a look at it. Obviously, I must have seen it through a little bit of a alcoholic haze, but it was a really, really good move and a really good goal. So that's my second game. A world of difference, a season apart, all because of Kevin Keegan, but all because of us pulling everything together.
Good stuff, Steve Hasty. Oh, you're on mute, mate. You're still on mute. I can't unmute you, mate.
There we go. Sorry.
That's it.
Sorry, guys. Just saying, last legacy game. Mark Brown put up a little piece on the end there about a game that he was at, and he said it was his first game. I'll remind him of the date. It was the 5th of May, 1984. Played Derby, heading up for promotion. Arthur Cox manager. We'd had Keegan, 2 seasons. Game starts off. It's a beautiful sunny day, and basically we just ripped them apart. Absolutely ripped them apart. The game ended 4-0. But it could have been 7 or 8. It was one of those games where you just knew it was going to be goal after goal after goal. The excitement, the euphoria, everything about the whole game. And it was the game that basically, other than mathematics, handed us the promotion. Guaranteed we're 3rd place, so we're promoted virtually. I mean, there was a lap of honour that went in. But on some of the other shows, we talk about how we love to see players getting to the byline and cross the ball. And Chrissy Waddle did just that. He went down the line, he hooked the ball back into the middle, and who's standing there but Kevin Keegan, and he knocks the header in and actually gets knocked out at the same time, gets absolutely flattened by the defender, but we're 1-0 up. Then what happens next? And that was Keegan's 27th goal of the season, by the way. 27 goals. Absolutely amazing. But what happens next is we get Peter Beardsley deciding to run the show. And we saw the person who was destined to take over from Keegan, take the mantle on as we knew Keegan was retiring. And Beardsley really, really did in this particular game. And he scored 2 beautiful goals. He scored his 17th goal of the season. Again, remarkable when you think about it. But you look at the team. I mean, there was his 4th goal. I'll miss out Chrissy Waddle's for now, but his 4th goal, Beardsley's 4th goal, lovely cross by Waddle, and Terry Mack did a marvellous impersonation of Joe Linton, where he swung for the ball, his right foot completely sliced it, and it went nowhere. And where did it end up? On the edge of the 6-yard box with Peter Beardsley, and he puts a diving header in. Absolutely, it was just planned. Absolutely perfect. I'm sure if you asked Terry Mack now, he would say that cross was absolutely destined to be on the end of Peter Beardsley's head, when we know for a fact it wasn't. But that's the way it was. But even Whitley Waddley's goal, Chrissy Waddle's goal, a move that involved McDermott hitting the ball to Keegan, who knocks the ball back to Beardsley, who strokes the ball over the top and into Waddle, who's running on, and he strokes the ball past the keeper. Moves like that, excitement like that, the way that the team just gelled. And you look at that team. I had to write it down just to remind people. We had Kevin Carr in goal. We had Kenny Wharton and John Anderson at fullback. We had Glenn Roeder and Steve Carney playing at the centre of defence. We had a midfield that was held together by a marvellous player in David McCreary. who I don't think gets the accolades that sometimes he deserves.
No, he doesn't. He
Agreed.
doesn't.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he deserves every accolade that's going in terms of the way that he could marshal and organise a midfield. Playing alongside him, he had Terry Mack, who was a totally different player to him, who, you know, yes, he could stick his foot in, but Terry Mack was just so different. And we'd seen him at Liverpool. And when he came back to Newcastle, he just carried on in that same vein. With John Chewick, of all people, again, probably, you know, underrated at that particular time. But when you have a forward line of Keegan, Beardsley and Waddle, then, you know, it was just a dream come true. As I say, that game got us promoted, all bar the shouting. We went up in third place. Keegan then, you know, later on in the season, we see him flying off in the helicopter. But we thought that was the start. With Arthur Cox as manager, and we were going to go places. And, you know, that it had been settled. You know, the seeds were sown rather. Little bit of we realised it was going to take another 8 years before we actually saw them come to fruition. Where we had to get Keegan to come back. But that for me, fabulous game, absolutely fabulous game.
Great stuff, some great recollections from the lads. I'm sure the viewers don't mind we're going into a little bit of extra time because some of the stories do have twists and turns, but some great recollections there. Okay, as regular viewers will know, we always do a couple of sections before the lads pick a 1 to 11. We'll do celebrity fans first. So this is fans who supposedly support Derby County. Some are alive, some might be dead, but here we go. The lads have got to guess them.
Dennis Skinner.
Correct.
The beast of Bolsover.
Tim.
That's right, Dennis Skinner. Now we're looking for the girl's name here.
No. Look at him sitting there drinking, smug as anything.
I've got to be honest, I would never have got this, lads.
No.
You got a clue there?
It's not my kind of films.
It's a Bollywood film, is it?
No, I think it's a Frankie Vaughan or Andy Thorne one, is it?
Correct.
Is it?
Well, I'm definitely can't guess this because the wife's watching.
Linda Lusardi.
That was a good conservative guess there from Steve Wilkinson, but it's not. No, it's Kieran Lee, a porn star on the left there. Yes, obviously quite happy with her husband there.
I wouldn't know what one of those was, Steve.
Okay.
Got a shop for them on the high street.
Okay, who's this, lads?
Is that Prince Harry?
It's not Prince Harry. I'll give you a clue. He's Irish.
I think I know this, but I'm going to be embarrassed for saying it.
Go
Is
for
it
it.
the lad that was in One Direction?
It is.
Oh, Neil Horan.
That's right. Well done, Niall Horan.
I didn't know his name. I recognise.
Wow.
No.
Good photo of him.
Yeah, it looks like Jim Carrey, but it's not.
Well, you're in the right profession.
Oh,
Looks like young Jack Nicholson. Can't be.
Oh, I tell you what, you're halfway there with one of the names.
Oh, Jack.
Jack D.
No, it's not Jack D, and it's not Jim Carrey.
O'Connell.
Well done, Jack O'Connell. I'll give you that.
wow.
Good shout, actor Jack O'Connell. I'm expecting Mitch to get this.
Oh man, it's a guitarist from Blur, isn't it?
Correct.
Yeah.
Cox is his surname, innit?
You need a bit. You need to extend that, and not in the adult film way.
Coxon, yes.
Correct. Graham Coxon.
Graham Coxon.
Last one, which is the one that I thought might stump you, but I bet you George gets this.
Yeah. Tim Brooke Taylor.
No, now he is a Derby. He was a Derby fan. I think he passed
He
away.
used to say he was, aye.
Yeah, well, he was definitely a Derby fan. No, that isn't Tim Brooke Taylor. But again, you're in the right area. You're warm.
He's an actor, then obviously.
He's an actor, yeah. He often wore hats. With us having the success with a porn star, then I'm happy to give you another clue. This guy would often, with one of his roles, he would give power to the people.
Robert Lindsay.
Oh man, Robert Lindsay.
Yeah.
Robert Lindsay, yes. Playing Cyrano de Bergerac there.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the celebrity ones done for this week. Players that played for Newcastle and Derby also include managers or coaches in this. So there's an array of talent. Don't think you'll have many problems with any of these, to be honest.
That's Arthur Cox.
Arthur Cox, of course, who's already featured on tonight's show.
Is that Budgie?
John Burridge.
Yeah.
Of course, he played. We often have this laugh on this show. There isn't a club that John Burridge hasn't played for.
That's in Safa Park.
That's Shefty Cucci.
Shefty Cucci.
Jim
Smith.
Bald Eagle. Dean Saunders.
Yeah.
Dean Saunders, of course, part of the coaching staff at St James's Park.
Leon Best.
Yes.
Leon Best. George Mitchell.
No.
Steve McLaren.
Steve McLaren.
Mick Harford.
Another one who's featured quite a bit over the last couple of weeks.
Certainly have.
Rob Lee.
Rob Lee.
Warren
Barton.
Who's the one? Is that Hendrick?
Correct. Jeff Hendrick. Jeff Hendrick, very young Jeff Hendrick. And that's it. A clean sweep on the players for you tonight, lads.
That was the last time you moved, was it?
It probably was, mate. Yeah, on the pitch as well as off it. Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
Some great ones there. And obviously over to you now, lads, to pick your 11. So, Steve, you've had to wait last for everything today, so we'll come to you first for that.
Right. I was, you know what, it was difficult because we had a whole raft of players to choose from. I went with, in goal, because I was struggling, I went with Shea Given, right? Just because he's on the coaching staff there now.
Coaching there now.
Yeah. And then I went with, because I saw Andy Griffin as a fullback, which was where I was coming from then. And then after that, I was, tell you the truth, I was really, really struggling. I mean, I've got a whole raft of players listed. I've got plenty of strikers. I had more strikers than I knew what to do with, more than odd winners. But really, really struggling to actually put a team together. So I think what I'll do is I'll leave it and let you rattle the names off, because otherwise it'll blow the team of players that you're going to choose, because I'm just going to rattle off a load of names and people are going to go, all right, because I've literally just got striker after striker after striker.
Lots of strikers.
Anybody confident then with their 11? Anyone give it a shot? Go on, Mitch.
I've got a swashbuckling 4-2-4. With Budgie in goal, back four, Warren Barton, Gary Caldwell, Aidan McCaffrey, and Andy Griffin. I've got Bob Lee and Gordon Hughes in centre mid. And then a front four of Sarge, Paul Kitson, Mick Harford, and Shefty Cucci, all managed by Arthur Cox.
Brilliant stuff. Okay, Stu.
Right. Again, I was plenty of forwards, so I've got a 3-3-4 formation. Shea Given in goal, back three of Warren Barton, Andy Griffin, And a lad called Michael Hoganson, after doing some research, I found is a local lad, and he didn't play for Newcastle, but he did for Derby, and he fell out with one of the managers there. But he's now back and playing for one of the teams up north. Midfield three of Hendrick, Robert Lee, and Lauren Robert. Yeah. And then up front, I've got Mick Harford, Leon Best, Paul Kitson. And after doing research, I come across this guy that George won't even remember, a chap by the name of Harry Bedford, who scored. He played for Derby, he signed for Newcastle, played 30 games for Newcastle between 1930 and 1932. And he scored 17 goals in 30 games. So I thought that deserves a mention. So I put him up front as well. And managers, we could have had Jim Smith, Steve McLaren, but I think the obvious choice is Arthur Cox.
Great stuff. Steve Wilkinson.
Yeah, well, I've had Shea Given in goal he's on the coaching squad there. Same defence as Mitch, Andy Griffin, Gary Caldwell, Aidan McCaffrey, and Warren Barton. Midfield, reluctantly Jeff Hendrick, but I think he played well for every other team apart from when he's played here, so kept him in. Rob Lee, Lauren Robert in the midfield. Up front, Leon Best, Paul Goddard, and not mentioned so far, Hughie Gallagher apparently played for Derby.
Yeah, he did.
So I've never seen him play, but he was pretty good apparently. So that was my team. And again, Arthur Cox is manager out of the options of Jim Smith and McLaren.
George?
Old-fashioned 1 to 11. Eric Steele, Warren Barton, Bobby Ferguson, Dave Bell, Gary Caldwell, Rob Lee, and then right across the front from 7 is Gordon Hughes, Paul Goddard, Leon Best, Paul Kitson, and Lauren Robert, and manager Cox. Yeah, could be anybody else as manager.
What do you make of all them then, Steve?
You know what? I was going to go with a striking partnership of Hughie Gallagher and a bloke called Duncan Hutchison, who was actually signed to replace Gallagher, but ended up being quite a star in himself for those 3 years, but also ended up at Derby. And then obviously I didn't know whether any of you would remember Lauren Robert because he was only there a few months. But the rest of them, I'm amazed that none of you picked Glenn Hodges. Absolutely shocking. God, he was the first player from Wimbledon to play at international level. I'm amazed you missed him. He was fantastic for us, wasn't he?
Did he last 80 days or something?
86
5 games.
Wow.
86 days.
How long did he last at Derby?
Yeah. That probably he was probably bought at the beginning of June as well.
How long did he last at Derby, Steve?
I'm not sure, but he had quite a career. But I mean, I just got there that 86 games. There was another guy called Gordon Hughes that we had from 1956 to 1963, George. We paid 30 quid for him. We sold him for 12 grand.
Yeah.
That was a good deal.
That was a good deal. Mike Ashley would have loved that.
Gordon was one of the last part-timers that actually kept his job down the pit where he played for our first team. And it made common sense, financial sense, because he was, with his pay from the pit and his pay from his part-time, he was earning more than bloody Jackie Milburn was.
Great stuff. Well, we have gone in extra time, but it was well worth it. Some great stories, some great recollections. Obviously, next week we are going to do Hull City, which is thanks to Tom Dixon, who clearly just scours the internet and looks for the hardest teams for us to do each week. The following week, we're going to do Southampton. So that's the next 2 weeks sorted. Thanks for everybody's suggestions, including Paul Gibson, who suggests that maybe we could do a late show where we can reminisce about various X-rated stars and films. Maybe we could do that at some point. We might start with Confessions of a Window Cleaner or Confessions of a Driving Instructor with Robin Asquith.
Legacy porn fans, is that?
Legacy porn fans, yeah. Well, I think we better start with those kind of soft titles first, lads. We don't want to get too carried away. But great suggestion, Paul. I'm not sure our hearts would be able to take it, I'm afraid. And we'll probably all get chucked out the house. Thanks for that, guys. Great to see you.
Thank you.
I'll see Steve and I'll see Mitch on Friday night for the Three Amigos.
Cheers.
Take care.
Bye.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, Marjorie.
Good night, Marjorie.
Bye.
Night, Marjorie.
Take care. Good night, everybody.
Critics attack. It feels like I've been talking to myself again. But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look